Chapter 25. Hawkwing limped along at the rear of his clan. His leg ached terribly, but he forced himself to keep going. Almost a moon had passed since he had injured himself falling from the tree, and his leg was mostly better, but they had been walking since dawn, and now it was past sun-high. Leafstar would call for a rest break if I asked her to, Hawkwing thought, but I can keep going for now, if Plumwillow can do it. He was ready to suffer through his pain if it would get them to their new home faster. I hope we find it before Plumwillow kits, or failing that, before Pebbleshine does. Plumwillow's belly was huge now. She was close to the time of her kidding, but she kept up with her clanmates and never complained. Pebbleshine often walked beside her, encouraging her, and Curlypaw did her best to make sure that both she-cats had prey. Hawkwing was prouder of his apprentice with every day that passed. Her energy, her commitment to her clan, and the way she made sure every cat was fed before she took Freshkill for herself. But Freshkill was hard to come by on their journey. Every cat was tired, sore-pawed, and thinner than they had been when they lived in the gorge. Life had become an endless round of sleeping, traveling, and hunting. Though Leafstar still took the lead, encouraging her clan onward, she looked wearier with every day that passed, and Hawkwing sometimes detected doubt in her eyes. Surely our leader can't be losing her faith that StarClan will guide us. On the worst days, Hawkwing struggled to keep his own hope alive that soon they would find ThunderClan, and sensed that his clanmates were struggling too. StarClan hadn't sent Echo Song any more visions, so there was nothing to do but trek onward and trust that they were heading in the right direction. But when each nightfall found SkyClan still wandering in the wilderness, it became harder to hold on to that trust. Sometimes at night, Hawkwing had heard Leafstar and Waspwhisker talking together in low, anxious tones. A hollowness opened up inside Hawkwing as he listened. If the clan leader and the deputy don't know what to do, what hope is there for the rest of us? And why is StarClan putting us through all this? Still, Hawkwing reflected, SkyClan had become even closer, more tightly bound together as they traveled, each cat depending on the others. Now he could see MacGyver letting a tired Clovertail lean against his shoulder as they walked, and everywhere cats were meowing quietly and peacefully to each other. Maybe that's why StarClan is letting our journey take so long, Hawkwing thought, so that we learn how much we need each other. Pebbleshine dropped back to pat alongside Hawkwing, brushing her tail along his pelt. Hawkwing blinked at her affectionately. I'm so glad our kits will be born in this clan, he mewed. So am I, Pebbleshine purred. There can't be a better clan anywhere. Coming to the top of a rise, the cats looked out across a wide valley with the dens of a small two-leg place near the bottom. We'll take a break here, Leafstar announced. We need to be fed and rested before we tackle that two-leg place down there. She led the way a few fox lengths down the slope to where a stretch of gorse and bramble gave shelter from the wind and some hope of prey. Plumwillow and Clovertail flopped down there with sighs of relief. We'll hunt for you, Bellaleaf meowed, bounding up to the two she-cats with her brother Rileypool at her shoulder. And I'll catch something for you, Curlypaw promised Pebbleshine. The speckled she-cat flicked Curlypaw's ear with the tip of her tail. Thank you, she responded. But I'm not so big yet that I can't hunt for myself. Come on, Hawkwing. Let's all go together. And me, Blossomheart added. Waspwhisker joined them as well, and Hawkwing's spirits lifted as he and his friends crept into the undergrowth, jaws parted to taste the air for prey. This is almost like a hunting patrol in the forest above the gorge. Venturing deeper into the bushes, Hawkwing and the others spread out in their search. Hawkwing picked up the strong scent of a rabbit and followed it along a narrow path between brambles. Finally, he spotted the creature lolloping ahead of him, its white tail bobbing up and down. Hawkwing kept pace with it, 2 or 3 fox lengths behind, until it halted, sniffing at something on the ground. Glancing back, Hawkwing saw that Blossomheart and Curlypaw were both within sight. He beckoned to them, signing to them for silence. Circle around, he whispered, gesturing with his tail. Come at it from the other side, and I'll drive it toward you. Curlypaw nodded, her eyes gleaming with excitement, and slid through the undergrowth in one direction, while Blossomheart veered off in the other. While Hawkwing waited for them to get into position, he was painfully reminded of his last hunt with his father, when he and Sharpclaw had cooperated just like this. With an effort, he pushed the memory away, forcing himself to concentrate on this rabbit and his clanmate's need for fresh kill. Finally, Hawkwing spotted movement in the undergrowth on the other side of the rabbit, which told him Curlypaw and Blossomheart were ready. Letting out a fearsome yowl, Hawkwing pelted forward, heading for his prey. The rabbit sat erect, terror in its bulging eyes. Then it took off. But instead of making for Blossomheart and Curlypaw, it doubled back until Hawkwing thought it was going to run right onto his own claws. As Hawkwing reached for it, the rabbit veered aside, and Hawkwing spotted the entrance to a burrow among the roots of a nearby gorse bush. "No!" he screeched. He made a frantic pounce, landing awkwardly and jarring his injured leg so the pain jolted right up into his ribs. But he was too late. With a last flash of its white tail, the rabbit plunged into the hole and vanished. "Fox dung!" Hawkwing snarled, lashing his tail in frustration. "This is what happens when we hunt in strange territory," he thought, clawing furiously at the ground. "The prey knows the terrain, but we don't." Blossomheart and Curlypaw reappeared, both of them looking disappointed. "Never mind." Blossomheart was clearly trying to sound cheerful. "We'll find something else." But no more prey showed itself as they made their way through the undergrowth, until they emerged onto the hillside again, where they came upon Wasp-Whisker and Pebbleshine. "I caught this shrew," Pebbleshine mewed, giving her prey a disdainful prod. "But it's a scrawny little thing. It's hardly a mouthful." "Better than nothing," Hawkwing responded, brushing his pelt against hers. "Bury it, and we'll pick it up on the way back." While Pebbleshine scraped earth over the shrew, Hawkwing glanced around, realizing that they had come out of the thicket much closer to the two-leg place. Farther down the hill, a line of bushes separated them from the first of the dens. "We might try down there," Wasp-Whisker suggested. Hawkwing wasn't too keen on going so close to the two-leg place, but he realized that there was a lot of sense in the clan deputy's suggestion. "I probably scared off all the prey up here, screeching at that rabbit." Wasp-Whisker led the way down the slope to the bushes, but when they reached them, there were too many competing scents. The acrid tang of monsters and the thunderpath, traces of dogs and two-legs, and more that Hawkwing couldn't even identify. "This is hopeless," Blossomheart mewed. "Let's go back." Pebbleshine had slipped farther into the bushes, and now she glanced over her shoulder, her eyes gleaming. "Come look at this." Hawkwing slid through the branches to her side and saw a wide stretch of ground in front of him, covered with the same hard black surface as a thunderpath. Several monsters crouched there, and at one side a thunderpath led away. Beyond the monsters loomed the gray walls of a two-leg den. "It's a kind of monster camp," Pebbleshine whispered. Wasp-Whisker poked his head through the branches just behind them. "What are you playing at?" he demanded. "Get away from there." "It's okay," Pebbleshine responded. "All the monsters are asleep, and there's a really interesting smell coming from that one." She angled her ears toward a monster at the edge of the camp. It had a big platform jutting out of its back, with low sides and something shiny resting inside it. Hawkwing drew air over his scent glands and realized what Pebbleshine meant. The smell coming from the monster was rich and appetizing. "It smells like prey, but how can it be on the back of a monster?" Wasp-Whisker had scented it too. "Okay, let's take a look," he meowed. "But keep watch for two-legs, and if the monsters start to wake up, get out of here fast." He took the lead as the three cats ventured into the open. Blossomheart and Curlypaw followed a few paces behind them. Curlypaw's eyes stretched wide, half excited and half afraid. Hawkwing realized that she had never been so close to monsters before. As he drew nearer, Hawkwing could hear clucking noises coming from the back of the monster. The shiny things he had seen from the bushes were some kind of weird nests. "There are birds in there," he gasped. "And they're trapped," Pebbleshine added. "They must be some kind of two-leg prey." "That's just what they are," Wasp-Whisker told the younger cats. "They're called chickens. Some two-legs near the gorge used to keep them." "Are they good to eat?" Curlypaw asked. Wasp-Whisker swiped his tongue around his jaws. "Oh, yes," he mewed. For a few heartbeats, the cat stood still, staring at the clucking, feathery mass of chickens. Hawkwing felt even hungrier as the succulent smell flowed over him. "You know," Pebbleshine meowed, glancing warily around, "the monster is asleep, and there aren't any two-legs around. Why don't we—" "You're not suggesting we climb onto a monster's back?" Blossomheart interrupted, half intrigued and half scared. "Why not?" Hawkwing asked, with an admiring glance at Pebbleshine. "She's so brave. We could get enough fresh kill to feed the whole clan." Curlypaw gave an excited little bounce. "Just think of their faces when we get back." "We could do it." Hawkwing turned to the clan deputy. "What do you think, Wasp Whisker?" For a moment, Wasp Whisker still gazed thoughtfully at the monster. Then he nodded slowly. "Let's go for it. Hawkwing, you and Curlypaw keep watch. The rest of you, follow me." "I can climb up too," Hawkwing mewed, before any cat could move. "No, I can tell your leg is hurting," Wasp Whisker responded. "You're more use here on the ground." "Then Pebbleshine should stay here too," Hawkwing meowed. "Yes, Pebbleshine, you have to be careful," Blossomheart agreed, while Wasp Whisker nodded. Pebbleshine twitched the tip of her tail. "I'm not big enough yet for it to make any difference," she protested. "I can still run just as fast as the rest of you, and it was my idea." "Okay," Wasp Whisker sighed. "Let's just get on with it before we all die of starvation." Hawkwing and Curlypaw watched anxiously as their three clanmates clambered onto the back of the monster. The harsh sound of their claws scraping against the monster's pelt made Hawkwing's neck fur rise with the strangeness of it. The gentle clucking of the chickens rose to an alarmed squawking, but to Hawkwing's relief the monster didn't wake up. "It's amazing up here," Pebbleshine yowled. "There are so many of these fat birds, and they're all just trapped here. If we can work out how to open the nests, we can feed the whole clan." Hawkwing crouched on the ground beside his apprentice, his heart pounding as the moments slid past. "What's taking so long?" he wondered, expecting at any moment to see his clanmates' heads pop back up. He tried to make sense of the sounds that were coming from the monster. The chickens' squawks had risen to a terrified clamor, but he couldn't hear the cats at all. Then Hawkwing heard another noise, coming from the two-leg den beyond the monster camp. A moment later, a two-leg came into view, heading toward the monsters. "Don't move," Hawkwing called out. "A two-leg!" "Maybe the two-leg will go to one of the other monsters, and he won't notice us," Curlypaw whispered. "Let's hope so." But Hawkwing realized his hope was in vain as the two-leg strode purposefully toward the monster with the chickens. "He's coming right toward us!" he yowled. "Get out of there now!" At first there was no response from the cats inside the monster. The two-leg will wake it up, Hawkwing thought, agonized. Then they'll know we were trying to steal their prey. "Hurry!" he urged. Wasp Whisker's head popped up from behind the low barrier at the back of the monster, and Blossomheart appeared a heartbeat later. "Fox stung!" Wasp Whisker exclaimed, looking furiously disappointed as he and Blossomheart scrambled over the barrier and leaped down to join Hawkwing and Curlypaw. "Where's Pebbleshine?" Hawkwing asked as they landed beside him. "I'm still here," Pebbleshine replied from inside the monster, her words almost drowned out by louder squawking. "I've managed to open one of the nests. I've got a chicken!" "Then get down here, fast!" Hawkwing responded. His gaze was fixed on the two-leg, who tramped across the hard surface of the monster camp, opened up the monster, and climbed into its belly. He didn't seem to have noticed the cats crouching a few tail lengths away from the monster's round black paws. "Pebbleshine, now!" Wasp Whisker screeched. "I'm coming!" Pebbleshine sounded frustrated. "But this stupid bird is fighting!" "Then let it go!" Hawkwing yowled. "But the clan needs it!" Pebbleshine protested. More loud squawking followed. Then Pebbleshine's forepaws appeared on the side of the monster. Hawkwing could see her face. At the same moment, the monster woke up with a deep-throated growl. "Jump, Pebbleshine, jump!" Blossomheart shrieked as she and Wasp Whisker backed away. Hawkwing shoved Curlypaw after them, then ran toward the monster. But just then the monster lurched into motion. Shock jolted through Hawkwing as its huge black paws rolled backward, threatening to crush him. The others scattered. Trembling, Hawkwing stood his ground. "I won't run away while Pebbleshine is in danger." When the monster was a tail length away from Hawkwing, it halted. He crouched, ready to leap up beside Pebbleshine. With a louder roar and the belch of a stinking cloud from its hindquarters, the monster began to move forward, heading for the thunderpath. Hawkwing was too late. "Pebbleshine!" he screeched. He pushed off in an enormous leap, but he fell short, landing with a thump on the hard ground. His last sight of his mate was her scrabbling at the side of the monster, only for the big brute to stumble and lurch, making Pebbleshine lose her grip and fall back down. She stared wide-eyed at Hawkwing, her mouth moving as if she was yowling something to him. But Hawkwing couldn't hear it over the roar of the monster. Putting out every scrap of his strength, Hawkwing hurled himself forward in pursuit. But as the monster sped up, he realized it was hopeless. The gap between him and Pebbleshine grew wider and wider, and the monster roared down the thunderpath until it disappeared into the distance. Chapter 26. Hawkwing lay on the cold ground in the shelter of a gorse bush. 3 sunrises had passed since the monster had carried Pebbleshine away, and the cats of SkyClan remained in their camp on the hillside above the two-leg place, hoping that she would find her way back to them. But Hawkwing's hope was dwindling. He felt as though a heavy weight was crushing his ribs, pressing him into the earth. Hearing movement close by, he blinked his eyes open and saw his sister Blossomheart leaning over him. "Look, Hawkwing," she mewed. "I brought you this shrew." She patted the small creature toward him. Hawkwing gave the prey a perfunctory sniff, then closed his eyes again. His belly churned. He had no appetite at all. "Hawkwing," Blossomheart pleaded. "You haven't eaten for days. You can't go on like this, please." Hawkwing ignored her, and after a couple of heartbeats, he heard her paw steps receding. He didn't want to eat, or talk, or do anything except lie here and grieve for Pebbleshine. He hadn't thought it possible to feel such pain and still go on living, as if a cat's claws were snagged in his heart, and he would never get free of them. The whole clan was grieving, too, ever since the terrible day when Hawkwing had limped back with the hunting patrol and told them how the monster had carried Pebbleshine away. But she'll find her way back. Hawkwing had at first told himself. "I'm sure of it. She's clever and brave. She'll come back, won't she?" But it had always been a struggle for Hawkwing to convince himself of that, and as the days slipped by, it became harder still. There were so many dangers out there for a cat on her own. 2 legs, dogs, monsters. "She has to come back," Hawkwing insisted to himself. "Our kits have to be born. I have to be a father to them." Ever since Pebbleshine had told him her news, Hawkwing had pictured the kits in his mind and thought about the things he would teach them. "I'd show them the hunter's crouch and how to stay downwind of prey, and I'd tell them the noble history of their clan." Hawkwing's body contorted in a sudden spasm of rage. "This is all Darktail's fault!" If the rogue Tom hadn't turned on the clan that had taken him in, Hawkwing knew none of this would have happened. Pebbleshine would still be safely in the gorge, waiting in the nursery for their kits to be born. And I was the cat who made friends with Darktail. The claw in his heart sank deeper still. I spoke up for him, even against my own father. Sighing, Hawkwing pressed his face into the cold grass. He was too grief-stricken even to sustain his anger for more than a few heartbeats. A little while later, Hawkwing heard cats approaching him again. "Hawkwing." It was his clan leader's voice. Hawkwing opened his eyes to see Leafstar and Echo Song sitting beside him. Wearily, he waited to find out what they wanted. "We've stayed here for several days," Leafstar began, her voice gentle and compassionate. Hawkwing understood at once what his clan leader was about to say. "No," he yowled inwardly, digging his claws into the ground. "I won't leave until Pebbleshine comes back." "If Pebbleshine had been able to escape from the monster anywhere nearby," Leafstar continued, "she would have come back to us by now. It's time for us to move on." "No!" Hawkwing protested aloud this time, half sitting up. "We can't leave her! I won't leave her!" "This is my decision. The clan leader's tone was firm, though sympathy glowed in her amber eyes. "We're too exposed here, too near two legs, and the hunting is poor. We can't stay any longer." "Pebbleshine is strong and smart," Echo Song added. "She knows which direction we're headed, and what we're looking for. She'll try to find us." Hawkwing knew that the medicine cat was right, but that didn't ease the hard knot of grief in his belly, or shake his conviction that he needed to stay near the place he had last seen his mate. "I don't believe this is the end of Pebbleshine's story," Echo Song continued. "You won't lose her forever." Hope struck through Hawkwing like the sun shining through storm clouds. "Have you had a vision?" he asked eagerly. The medicine cat shook her head, and Hawkwing sank back, crushed. "No, StarClan hasn't told me anything," Echo Song mewed sadly. "It's just what I believe." A few tail lengths away, the other cats were rising to their paws, casting doubtful glances at Hawkwing. Curly Paw padded nervously up to him, carrying a mouse in her jaws. "I caught this for you myself," she told Hawkwing, dropping her prey at his paws. "Thanks, Curly Paw." Hawkwing pushed the mouse away. "But you should eat it. I won't be traveling with you. I'm going to wait here for Pebbleshine, in case she comes back." Leafstar fixed her amber gaze on Hawkwing, deep concern in her eyes. "Hawkwing, you have to come with us," she meowed. "Please. SkyClan needs you." "You don't," Hawkwing argued. "I'm just one cat. When Pebbleshine comes back, we'll both catch up to you." "No, we need you now." Echo Song agreed with the clan leader. "Do you remember how you and Pebbleshine drove off the raccoon when it attacked me and the kits after the gorge battle? And how you saved us when you killed Dodge in the two-leg place? What would we have done without you then?" Leafstar nodded. "You've always been so loyal and strong. Both of you." Curly Paw ventured closer to Hawkwing, leaning into his shoulder so that he felt the warmth of her long-furred pelt. "You're such a great mentor, Hawkwing," she mewed. "I can't imagine learning so much from any other cat. I need you." Hawkwing dipped his head. "My duty is to my clan now." Wasn't that what he'd decided when they left the gorge? And he could see that Leafstar had a point. The clan did need him. Something inside Hawkwing wanted to give way, but he didn't know how he could force his paws to carry him away from the last place he and Pebbleshine had been together. "We don't even know we're heading in the right direction," he pointed out. "What if we're not? What if I leave with you and miss Pebbleshine only to end up wandering for moons?" "Our faith is being tested," Echo Song admitted with a sigh. "But we must believe StarClan wouldn't lead us astray. There are so few of us now that our only chance of surviving is to stick together." "Pebbleshine would want you to stay with us," Leafstar pointed out. Hawkwing realized that his medicine cat and his clan leader were right. Pebbleshine has always been loyal to SkyClan. She never even considered leaving it to stay on our old territory. She understood that the clan is more important than one cat. Looking into Leafstar's eyes, he saw that she truly believed his mate wasn't coming back. At least she won't be coming back here. He wondered if he could bear to give up hope. Realistically, he knew it was unlikely, perhaps one chance in a whole field of chances. Is that tiny chance worth the cost to the clan? No, he accepted at last. It isn't. Heaving a huge sigh, Hawkwing bent his head to sniff Curly Paw's mouse. Although the very thought of food made him sick, he forced himself to eat. He knew that he would need his strength for the long journey that lay ahead. Leafstar, Echo Song, and Curly Paw all nodded encouragingly. "You're making the right decision, Hawkwing," Leafstar said solemnly. "I'm grateful. The whole clan is grateful." Maybe my clanmates are right, he thought. We still need to find the spark that remains and make our new lives with the rest of the clans. Pebbleshine and our kits will find SkyClan again one day. We will all be together again in the new territory beside the water, the home that Echo Song dreamed of. But as he swallowed the last of his prey and joined his clanmates to set out again, Hawkwing still felt as if he was leaving Pebbleshine behind. What chance will she have of finding us now? He wondered. Padding along at the rear of the clan, his head down, Hawkwing tried to shake off the thought, but it clung in his mind like a burr in his pelt. Will I ever see Pebbleshine again? Chapter 27. Do you want to lean on my shoulder? Hawkwing asked Plumwillow. The Sky Clan cats were still trying to go in the direction Barley had shown them, trudging up a long slope covered with tough moorland grass. The ridge ahead of them never seemed to get any closer. A wide blue sky arched above them, where one or two birds were circling, and a stiff breeze buffeted their fur. Thanks, Hawkwing. Plumwillow shifted a pace sideways so that she could lean against him. Her belly is absolutely enormous, Hawkwing thought. It won't be long before her kids are here. A pang of sadness clawed through him as he wondered whether Pebbleshine would get as big as this before the end. Wherever she was, and Hawkwing had to believe that she was alive somewhere, their kits would still be growing inside her. A half moon had passed since Pebbleshine had been carried away by the monster with the chickens. Since then there had been no sign or scent of her, but Echo Song had dreamed the same dream several times. A pleasant place near water where Sky Clan would belong. Have you seen Pebbleshine in your dreams? Hawkwing had asked. The medicine cat had paused for a long time before replying. No, she mewed with a sad shake of her head. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she won't find her way there. Hawkwing was left to struggle with his grief. Even though he had decided to stay with his clan, he still wondered what the future could possibly hold for him. Everything he did, hunting, seeking for safe places to rest, even his mentoring of Curlypaw was completely meaningless now. Only Plumwillow, who had lost her mate, Sandynose, seemed to understand his pain. Now Plumwillow huffed out a gasping breath, and Hawkwing felt something move against his side. That must be the kits, he realized, shivering as wonder and a terrible sadness threatened to tear him apart. I understand, Plumwillow murmured. It's really hard for me to go on without Sandynose, but I have to believe he's out there somewhere, just like Pebbleshine. I have to believe that we and our kits will be reunited someday. Hawkwing gazed deeply into the gray she-cat's eyes and saw that she really did understand what he felt. Maybe she's the only one who can. After what felt like a moon of toiling upward, the Sky Clan cats reached the top of the hill. Look at that! Wasp-Whisker exclaimed. Hawkwing looked down to see a shallow valley in front of him. The ground was covered with grass and stretches of woodland, dotted with outcrops of rock. At the bottom lay a reed-fringed lake, its shimmering surface reflecting the blue of the sky. In the distance, on the far side of the lake, was a small cluster of two-legged dens. This must be it, Tiny Cloud exclaimed. Our new home! Parsley Seed's eyes were sparkling. It was the first time, Hawkwing realized, that he had looked happy since his sister disappeared. This must be the place that Echo Song dreamed about. Anticipation stirred inside Hawkwing, and his pads prickled with excitement. The valley looked just right for a clan's territory, with its grassy open spaces and wooded areas full of undergrowth for shelter and hunting grounds. But I don't see any other cats, Hawkwing thought. Where is ThunderClan? Glancing to the side, he spotted Echo Song. She was gazing down into the valley with interest, but he didn't think she looked convinced just yet that this was the place of her visions. Leafstar tilted her head toward Wasp-Whisker, gesturing him out of earshot of the other cats. For a few moments they conferred quietly together. Then they both returned to join the other cats. Okay, listen up, he meowed. This could be the place from Echo Song's visions, but we have to be cautious. We're going to split into patrols to explore. Look out for places we might camp and good places to hunt, and keep your eyes open for other cats. Yes, Leafstar added. For all we know, this is the territory of one of the other clans. The last thing we want is to walk into another conflict. We'll meet up again beside the lake," Wasp Whisker finished. Wasp Whisker led one patrol and Sparrow Pelt another. Hawkwing was surprised when the deputy chose him to lead the third. Meanwhile, Leaf Star led the way to a nearby copse where Plum Willow and Clovertail could rest. Echo Song and Fidget Paw joined them, and the remaining warriors stayed with them, on guard. Hawkwing set out with MacGyver, Parsley Seed, Birdwing, and Curly Paw. Together they headed down into the valley, pausing to investigate clumps of trees, thickets of fern and bramble, and the crevices in rocks where prey might hide. "Can we hunt, Hawkwing?" MacGyver asked. "My jaws are watering. There's so much prey sent around." "Sure," Hawkwing replied. "We need to know that the clan can feed itself here." MacGyver's eyes gleamed. "Then it would be pretty irresponsible not to hunt." "Don't get carried away," Hawkwing warned his patrol while they padded toward a stretch of deeper woodland. "Remember, this is strange territory, and we don't know what might be lurking. Foxes, maybe badgers," he finished with a shudder. "And if this is another clan's territory, we don't want them to think we're stealing their prey. Curly Paw, stay close to me." Hawkwing looked around warily as he ventured into the woodland with his apprentice by his side. The trees were old and twisted here, many of them covered with ivy and interspersed with banks of fern and bramble thickets. Sunlight filtered down through the foliage, dappling the ground with green-gold light.
"It's great here,"
Curly Paw sighed.
"I hope we can stay."
"Let's find out a bit more about the place first," Hawkwing meowed. "What can you scent?" Curly Paw stood still, her jaws parted to drink in the air. Watching her, Hawkwing reflected that since he had lost Pebble Shine, his heart hadn't been in Curly Paw's training. "Am I teaching her anything?" he wondered. "I've got to start making more of an effort."
"Mouse,"
Curly Paw murmured after a few heartbeats.
"And squirrel. Oh, and rabbit, and I think there's fox, Hawkwing, but I'm not sure."
She glanced around as if she expected to see the red-pelted creature slinking toward her with its fangs bared. "Very good," Hawkwing told her with an approving nod. "You're right, a fox has been through here, but 2 or 3 days ago. The scent is faint, so I don't think it stayed long." As he finished speaking, he heard a yowl of triumph from farther into the woods, and Parsley Seed appeared dragging the body of a plump rabbit. "Look what I caught," he announced, obviously pleased with himself. "We can all share." "Great catch," Hawkwing praised him. MacGyver and Birdwing reappeared a moment later, Birdwing carrying a mouse, and the patrol settled down to eat. "I've got something to show you," MacGyver mewed between mouthfuls. "Something good, but it can wait." With the rabbit picked clean, MacGyver led the way farther into the trees, around a bramble thicket, and up a steep bank to a flat shelf of rock. "Look down there," he meowed, pointing with his tail. Hawkwing looked out over a deep hollow, the sides formed from rocks and the tangled roots of trees. Long grass and ferns covered the ground at the bottom. Just below Hawkwing's paws, a small spring bubbled out between 2 boulders and trickled out across the hollow in the direction of the lake. "What about that?" MacGyver asked proudly. "Isn't it a perfect place to camp?" Hawkwing nodded slowly. There were plenty of sheltered spots for dens, with room enough for every cat, and the steep sides would provide some protection. There was even a source of water.
"It's a bit like the gorge,"
Curly Paw murmured. There was a hint of wistfulness in her voice, telling Hawkwing how homesick she must feel. "Let's go find Leaf Star," Hawkwing suggested. "We'll get her to come and see it." Heading out of the wood again, Hawkwing reflected that this could be the perfect place for SkyClan to settle, except for one thing. There were no other cats here. If this is where StarClan intends us to be, where are the other warrior clans? Hawkwing tasted the air once more, wondering if somehow they could have missed picking up the traces of a large number of cats. This time he did smell cat, but only one, and there was something not quite right about the scent. Emerging from the undergrowth, Hawkwing spotted the cat, a plump, dark tabby Tom, sitting on a tree stump at the edge of the wood, grooming his long, glossy pelt. Hawkwing didn't need to see the collar around his neck to recognize a kitty pet. "I should have known," he thought. Is this territory so unfamiliar that I can't even tell when I'm smelling kitty pet scent? Greetings, he meowed, approaching the kitty pet and dipping his head politely. Do you live around here? The kitty pet looked up, mildly surprised. You're the second group I've seen today, he mewed. There are plenty of you, aren't there? The second group? Hawkwing was briefly excited until he realized that the kitty pet must mean he'd seen one of the other patrols. Trying to keep irritation out of his voice, he repeated his question. Oh, no, my nest is a long way away, with my housefolk, the kitty pet replied with a vague wave of his tail. My name's Max. Who are you? We are Sky Clan, Hawkwing replied proudly, introducing himself and the rest of his patrol. You're a scruffy-looking bunch, if you ask me, Max commented, looking the patrol up and down, then licking one forepaw and drawing it over his ear. No cat did ask you, Hawkwing thought, beginning to feel annoyed. You would look scruffy too if you'd had to fight for your life and then traveled for days and days looking for a new home, MacGyver snapped. Keep your fur on, Max responded, not at all offended. I know all about traveling. I stay out away from my housefolk all the time. He riffled his whiskers. It drives them crazy, but I always get a really good meal when I come home, he finished, swiping his tongue around his jaws. MacGyver flashed Hawkwing a glance, as if he was asking, Do we have to put up with this idiot? We're looking for more cats, Hawkwing began, determined to get as much information from Max as he could. Aren't there enough of you already? The heat of anger roiled in Hawkwing's belly, but he pushed it down. No, I will not claw his ears off, but oh, it's tempting. A specific group of cats, Birdwing explained patiently, as if she guessed that Hawkwing was close to losing his temper. They're called Thunder Clan. Their leader was, I suppose, a Tom called Firestar with a flame-colored pelt. Max yawned. Never heard of them. In fact, there aren't many cats around here, and none living by the lake. Hawkwing acknowledged his words with a brief nod. Thank you for your help. Any time. Max went back to his grooming. By now, Hawkwing could see that some of his clanmates were gathering by the lake and led his patrol to join them. They arrived at the same time as Leafstar and her group. The other patrols were already waiting. What do you think? Blossomheart asked, bounding up to Hawkwing as soon as he reached the rest of the clan. Isn't it great? It seems okay. Hawkwing still had his reservations, especially now that he was sure there were no other clans here. Leafstar called a clan meeting, speaking from a rock at the water's edge while her clan sat around her. This is the first place we've found where it seems possible to settle, she began, but we need to decide if it's the right place. Let's start by hearing from the patrols. Waspwhisker, Sparrowpelt, and Hawkwing all made their reports. There's good hunting here, Waspwhisker meowed, and we didn't spot many signs of predators. A fox here and there, maybe, but no trace of badgers. And there are plenty of places we might make our camp, Sparrowpelt added. We could do worse, Waspwhisker summed up at last. There doesn't seem to be much danger, and the two-leg nests are far enough away that the two-legs won't bother us. But there aren't any other cats, Hawkwing objected. If this is the place StarClan wanted us to find, then where is ThunderClan? Well, maybe they, Waspwhisker began. He broke off as Echo Song rose to her paws and came to stand beside the rock where Leafstar sat. This is not the place where we're supposed to be, she announced. Gasps of shock and protest came from the cats gathered around her. You mean we have to do more traveling? Rabbitleap asked. My paws are worn away already. What's wrong with it here? Firefern mewed. I don't want to go on. I can't go on, Plumwillow added. Not until my kits are born, and that won't be long now. Plumwillow has a point, Sparrowpelt agreed with a nod to the gray she-cat. We should stay here, at least until she gives birth and her kits are old enough to travel. We have to stop somewhere for that, and this is a good place, near water, with plenty of prey. Echo Song, we need a home. The medicine cat's green eyes were full of distress, but she never wavered. This is not the place StarClan showed me in my dreams, she insisted. If it was, ThunderClan and maybe the other clans too would be here to greet us. Believe me, if we stay here, no good will come of it. It doesn't feel right.
I know Plumwillow will be better off having her kits while we're traveling.
Plumwillow gave a disdainful sniff.
You don't have to carry them every paw step of the way,
she snapped, loud enough for Echo Song to hear her. And we're all exhausted, Rabbitleap added, exchanging a doubtful look with Birdwing. We'd have to have bees in our brains to leave a place as good as this. Hawkwing felt his irritation rising. Can't they see that's not the point? We're not just looking for a new home, we're trying to follow the will of StarClan. What about the prophecy? In the midst of more rebellious muttering from his clanmates, he rose to his paws. I agree with Echo Song, he meowed. This place feels wrong. It's good, but ThunderClan isn't here, so it can't be what we've been looking for.
And what about my kits?
Plumwillow demanded. Hawkwing gave her a warm glance. You're strong, Plumwillow. You'll take good care of them, whatever happens. Turning back to the rest of the clan, he added, We've followed StarClan this far. How can we start ignoring them now? And if we find the place where StarClan has been leading us, then maybe Pebbleshine and our kits will be there too. They'll find us there, somehow. Every cat looked at Leafstar, who paused for a long moment before speaking.
Plumwillow, what do you think?
She asked.
You're the cat with the most to lose right now if we make the wrong decision.
Plumwillow dipped her head.
I am tired, she confessed, and I think this is a good place to have my kits.
Leafstar nodded, remaining silent for a moment more.
I think we should stay here, Echo Song, she mewed, at least for a little while. Sparrowpelt and Plumwillow are right. This is a good place. I'm too tired and heartsick to go any further, and so are all of us. The entire clan needs a rest.
But that isn't right,
Echo Song protested.
StarClan isn't sending us any clear guidance,
Leafstar interrupted.
And we can't keep chasing hunches, hoping that fortune will favor us. We have traveled so far, and we are weary. We must get some strength back if we are to complete this quest.
Murmurs of relief and approval followed the clan leader's words. Hawkwing couldn't share his clanmates' feelings. He had hoped that when they reached the destination StarClan had in mind for them, he would be reunited with Pebbleshine. And now those hopes were dashed. This is wrong. She'll never find us here, I know it. Oh, StarClan, I'm trying to trust you that our destiny is still in front of us, that we haven't made a terrible choice that will see the end of SkyClan. But why must you test us this way? Chapter 28. Hawkwing crouched beside Pebbleshine in the milky warmth of the nursery. He was so full of joy that he thought it must burst out of him like a stream in Greenleaf overflowing its banks. His mate looked exhausted, but her eyes shone with love for the 3 new kits who lay snuggled against her belly, protected in the curve of her tail. They're so beautiful, Hawkwing whispered.
The little gray Tom looks just like you,
Pebbleshine murmured. Hawkwing gazed down wonderingly at the fluffy gray fur of his son. And the speckled white she-cat is just like you, he added. And the speckled gray Tom, well, he's like you and me. He touched his nose to the tiny kit's head. It's like seeing the best of us both combined into one cat. Pebbleshine let out a small meow of laughter. A shadow fell across the entrance to the nursery and Cherrytail patted in, a mouse dangling from her jaws.
I thought you could do with some fresh kill,
she meowed, dropping her prey beside Pebbleshine.
And I brought some wet moss,
Cloud Mist added, creeping softly in beside her mother, with Blossom Heart just behind her. She blinked in wonder as she looked down at the kits.
They're just perfect.
Hawkwing spotted more movement at the nursery entrance and looked up to see his father, Sharpclaw, poking his head inside. Is everything okay? He asked. We're all fine, thanks, Hawkwing replied. Let me know if you need anything, Sharpclaw continued. Hawkwing, you can take a day or 2 off from patrolling to be with Pebbleshine. Thanks, Hawkwing meowed. Just wait until their eyes open, Sharpclaw gave a snort of amusement. You'll have your paws full then. More seriously, he added, I know you'll be a good father, Hawkwing." Their visitors withdrew, leaving Hawkwing to curl up beside Pebbleshine, matching his rhythmic purr to hers. "This is perfect," he thought drowsily. From somewhere outside the nursery, Hawkwing heard a harsh, repetitive sound. What can that be? He wondered. Turning to look through the nursery entrance, Pebbleshine's head was still bent over her kits. And why doesn't she hear it? Squawk! Hawkwing jolted awake to the sound of a raucous screech coming from outside the warrior's den. Normally the sound would have alarmed him, but he was so furious at being awoken from such a happy dream that he charged recklessly out into the open, searching for the source of the noise. The screech came again from the direction of the lake. Hawkwing pounded through the trees until he reached the edge of the forest. In the pale light of dawn, he spotted a brown and white bird swooping across the lake. A big, stupid water bird. Hawkwing watched as the bird dived down, dipped its talons under the surface, then rose into the sky again, gripping a wriggling silver fish. A small part of Hawkwing's mind was interested to watch a bird he had never seen before, but that was overwhelmed by the hatred he felt because it had broken into his dream. Hawkwing let out a deep sigh. Stupid bird, stupid lake, stupid life! I know this isn't the right place for us to stay. SkyClan had been living beside the lake for a quarter moon, making their camp in the hollow MacGyver had discovered on the first day. Every cat had been busy arranging the dens, exploring their new territory, and collecting herb stores, but none of the activity had lightened Hawkwing's grim mood. Now that he and his clanmates were no longer traveling, he had time to confront the fact that he was still alive, even after losing his mate and everything they'd planned for their future. Misery engulfed him like a dark fog, and he had no idea how to find his way out of it. I have my whole life ahead of me, but what can the future possibly hold that would ever make up for what I've lost? Blossomheart appeared at Hawkwing's side, looking still ruffled from sleep. What on earth was that noise? She asked with a yawn. Hawkwing only grunted in reply, waving his tail at the stupid bird. Blossomheart shrugged. We never had to deal with that in the gorge, she mewed. Her words stung Hawkwing like a thorn in his pad. He knew that his sister wasn't scolding him, but he could never forget that in a way he was responsible for SkyClan being driven from the gorge. If I'd never trusted Darktail, or what would have happened if I'd stayed and tried to take revenge? I might have done that if I'd known that I'd lose Pebbleshine on this journey. Hawkwing dragged himself away from his dark thoughts to realize that Blossomheart was speaking to him. I'm sorry. What? His sister heaved a sigh. I said, why don't we take Bellaleaf and Curlypaw and go exploring on the other side of the lake? We haven't hunted over there yet. Yes, good idea, Hawkwing responded, making an effort to be more positive. He wanted to be a good mentor to Curlypaw, but he knew he hadn't spent enough time with her since he lost Pebbleshine, and even less since they arrived at the lake. I'll check with Wasp Whisker, and if he doesn't want us for a dawn patrol, we'll go. There were fewer trees on the far side of the lake. The ground was covered with smooth grass that stretched as far as the row of small two-leg dens. I don't like it as much over here, Blossomheart mewed, with a wary look at the dens. The two legs are too close for comfort, and there's not as much cover. I'm glad we settled on the other side. Wasp Whisker led a patrol over here yesterday, Bellaleaf responded. Rileypool went with him, and he told me all the two-leg dens are abandoned. There's not even the scent of two legs there. Weird, Hawkwing murmured. Why would two legs build dens here and then just go off and leave them? Then he shrugged. It's not as good for prey over here either, he added. There aren't as many places for them to hide. Still, we can get in some practice. Come on, Curlypaw, let's see your stalking. Pretend Bellaleaf is a mouse. Bellaleaf crouched down in the grass. Oh, I'm only a tiny little mouse, she mewed in a squeaky voice. Please don't eat me. Curlypaw flattened herself against the ground and began to creep forward, one paw at a time. Oh, no, Hawkwing interrupted before she had gone many paw steps. You're putting your paws down far too hard. His apprentice looked dejected, her head and tail drooping. Sorry.
You have to remember that a mouse will feel your paw steps through the ground before it hears you," Hawkwing told her. He couldn't remember whether he had actually told her that before. It's one of the first things an apprentice learns. I'm not being a good mentor at all. Everything's gone wrong since Pebbleshine disappeared. "Try it again," he told her. Curly Paw gave him a nervous glance before flattening herself to the ground again. Hawkwing took a deep breath. He knew his frustration was coming out in his tone. "But it's not you I'm frustrated with, Curly Paw. It's me." This time his apprentice's stalking was perfect. She seemed to glide over the ground, as if her paws were hardly touching it. "That's much better," Hawkwing meowed, trying to put some warmth into his voice. "Bellaleaf, you're doomed." During the lesson, Blossomheart had been poking around among the reeds that fringed the lakeshore. Now she beckoned Hawkwing over with her tail. "There are voles here," she murmured, when her brother padded up to her. "Shall we take some fresh kill back for the clan?" Hawkwing peered into the reeds and spotted movement among the stems. "Good idea," he responded, gesturing with his tail for Curly Paw and Bellaleaf to join them. Spotting a vole, Hawkwing began to creep up on it, remembering what he had told Curly Paw about setting her paws down lightly. His prey was nibbling something, seeming quite unaware of danger. Completely focused on the vole, Hawkwing was bunching his muscles for the final pounce when Curly Paw suddenly let out a loud caterwaul. The vole gave a start of terror, then scrambled to the water's edge, jumped in, and swam away. Furious, Hawkwing swung around. "Curly Paw, what?" He broke off as he heard the same raucous screech that had woken him from his dream. Looking up, he saw the brown water bird above his head, diving straight down at Blossomheart. His belly lurched, and his shoulder fur bristled at the sight of the creature's powerful beak and claws. With a challenging yowl, Hawkwing raced over to his sister. As the bird swooped over her, Blossomheart reared up on her hind legs and managed to swipe her claws over its eye. The bird let out another screech, raking its talons over Blossomheart's shoulder. Hawkwing leaped up and sank his claws into the bird's shoulder, catching it off guard. As the huge head swung around toward him, glaring with a malignant yellow eye, Blossomheart got in a harder blow, digging her claws into the eye she had scratched. At the same moment, Bellaleaf leaped up from the other side, only to be swatted away by a flap of the bird's wing. She hit the ground with a thump and lay there half-stunned. Screaming again, the bird began fighting valiantly to free itself from Hawkwing and Blossomheart, flailing with wings and claws and stabbing with its hooked beak. As they fell back, it rose unsteadily into the air and circled around a few tail lengths above the ground. At first, Hawkwing thought that they had scared it off. Then, with belly-churning dread, he realized that it was swooping in for another attack, and this time its target was Curly Paw. "No!" Hawkwing yowled. He lunged toward Curly Paw, reaching her just as the bird gripped her with its talons and began flapping its wings to take off again. "Help!" she wailed, digging in her claws in an effort to cling to the ground. "Hawkwing, help me!" Using all his strength, Hawkwing hurled himself upward and managed to snag his claws on the bird's leg. The extra weight unbalanced it so that it flopped back to the ground, and Hawkwing was able to sink his teeth into its back. With another screech, the bird loosened its grip on Curly Paw, who twisted around and slashed her claws at its underbelly, even though the bird still had her hind legs pinned. Blossomheart came charging up, blood from her wound spattering the grass. But before she reached them, Hawkwing dug his teeth deeper into the bird's back and wrenched its head around, tearing out a chunk of the bird's flesh. Shrieking furiously, the bird let go of Curly Paw and awkwardly flapped its way back into the air. Blood dripped from its wound onto the grass as it flew slowly away. Hawkwing turned to his sister. "Blossomheart, are you okay?" Blossomheart twisted her head to get a good look at the wound on her shoulder. "I've been better," she panted, "but I'll be fine. Hawkwing, that was amazing. You really lived up to your name." Glancing around to check on his clanmates, Hawkwing saw Bellaleaf stagger to her paws and pad shakily over to join the others. "Are you hurt?" Hawkwing asked. Bellaleaf gave her head a shake as if to clear it. "No, I'm okay. Just a bit stunned. That bird was really strong." Reassured, Hawkwing turned to Curly Paw and gave her scratches a good sniff. He was thankful that they all seemed to be shallow, hardly bleeding at all, but the apprentice was still shivering, her eyes wide with the memory of fear. Hawkwing, you saved my life,
she exclaimed, her voice shaking.
Just like you did in the two-leg place. If you hadn't been here...
Her eyes grew dark, as if she could see herself being carried away in the grip of the enormous bird. Feeling her terror as if it was his own, Hawkwing bent his head and began to lick Curly Paw's wounds. Don't think about it anymore, he mewed between strokes of his tongue. You were very brave and you're safe. That's what matters. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Curly Paw nodded and gave her pelt a shake.
I'll try.
As he comforted his apprentice, Hawkwing remembered the kits in his dream. His kits. They'll have meaningful lives too, he thought, even if I never get to see them. I wouldn't want them to give up because they don't have a father.
And now we'd better go home and get Echo Song to check us out,
Bellaleaf meowed. The cats skirted the edge of the lake as they made their way back to their new camp. Hawkwing kept a watchful eye on the sky in case the fierce bird returned.
Hawkwing, that was good advice you gave Curly Paw,
Blossomheart murmured.
I've noticed you've not been yourself lately. Of course you have good reasons, but you can't live your whole life like that. You have to believe what you told Curly Paw, too. You've got your whole life ahead of you, you know?
For a moment, Hawkwing considered how he should respond. I wouldn't want my kids to give up, so maybe I shouldn't either. I'm trying to believe, he replied at last, even though it was a struggle to get the words out. Blossomheart touched her nose to his.
All of SkyClan needs to believe that we have a future. If this isn't the right lake, then we have to believe we will find the right one, where the other clans live. If we don't find it soon, surely StarClan will send us a sign.
Hawkwing dipped his head, almost overcome. I hope so, he managed to mew. He watched Bellaleaf and Curly Paw padding ahead of him. Now that the danger was over, they were excitedly discussing the encounter with the water bird. They're so young and brave. Hawkwing knew that they were the future of SkyClan, the SkyClan that must live on, for seasons beyond counting, and prosper. Blossomheart is right. Chapter 29. The sun was going down, casting red light over the forest. Shadows were already gathering in the camp, but there was still a sunny spot near the freshkill pile where Hawkwing and several of his clanmates were eating. We've been here a moon now, Waspwhisker remarked, pausing as he devoured his vole. It's starting to feel like home. Hawkwing murmured agreement. He watched Curly Paw and Fidget Paw playing with Riley Pool at the other side of the camp. Riley Pool was pretending to be a badger, and the air was filled with the apprentice's joyful squeals of terror. As New Leaf melted into Green Leaf, the weather had grown warmer and the land around the lake had become lush and green. Somehow Hawkwing felt that his cold grief was melting too. He still missed Pebbleshine desperately and feared for her and their kits, but he was able to look forward to a better time. Someday I'll find them all again. Curly Paw was also doing much better. She had begun to thrive once he started really paying attention to her again, trusting that he could be a good mentor to her instead of always questioning himself. She's finally living up to her potential. She just needed patience and understanding. She's going to be an incredible warrior. A few heartbeats later, the peace of the camp was shattered by raised voices coming from the medicine cat's den. As Hawkwing turned toward it in surprise, Leafstar stormed into the open, followed by Echo's song.
It's not just a hunch,
the medicine cat protested.
It's a message from StarClan.
Leafstar whipped around to face her.
You just told me you had no vision,
she retorted furiously.
This is just a feeling you have.
Hawkwing exchanged a glance with Waspwhisker. It was almost unheard of for the clan leader and their medicine cat to have a serious disagreement, and just as unusual for Leafstar to show so much anger. Something is really wrong here.
But the feeling is so strong,
Echo Song meowed,
that I believe that StarClan is telling me something. There's no other explanation. I've known this since we arrived here. We can't stay here.
Hawkwing pricked his ears. Echo Song was putting into words the feeling he himself had experienced ever since SkyClan had made camp here. Something is simply wrong with this place. He had made the best of it, trying to concentrate on teaching Curlypaw and doing everything he could for his clan. He had made a huge effort to rein in his runaway temper and behave sensibly for once. And now he had to push down his instinct to join in the argument and agree with the medicine cat. But what does Echo Song think we should do?
Remember how long it took us to find this place?
Leafstar continued, clearly making an effort to speak more calmly.
And how hard it was, traipsing through strange territory with no home. A clan needs a home to be truly strong. Yes, I know that,
Echo Song responded with a sigh.
But this isn't meant to be our home. You can't deny that we haven't found the other clans here.
Leafstar grunted a reluctant agreement.
There's no sign that any other cats have ever lived here. Then wouldn't we be stronger if we were surrounded by equally strong clans?
Echo Song asked. Leafstar paced to and fro, the tip of her tail twitching, before she replied.
I've heard your argument,
she meowed at last.
But I am not convinced that we should uproot yet again. We're surviving here. And we should remember SkyClan has survived on its own for many seasons, with no help from other clans. If StarClan wants us to move on,
she added after a heartbeat's pause,
then they need to send us more guidance. We can't go on chasing the spark that remains forever. Not when we don't know where we're supposed to go.
But that's not how StarClan works,
Echo Song protested.
You know that as well as I do, Leafstar.
But that's what SkyClan needs, after all we've been through.
I understand.
Hawkwing thought Echo Song sounded desperately unhappy to be in conflict with their clan leader.
But you have to understand, too. I have deep concerns about this place. It doesn't feel right.
Leafstar's shoulders drooped in exhaustion.
I hear you, Echo Song, but I am not convinced that leaving is the right decision for SkyClan.
I will respect your leadership, Leafstar,
the medicine cat mewed, tipping her head resignedly.
But I feel we are going against the advice of StarClan, and as long as we do that, we're at risk.
Hawkwing watched as the clan leader and the medicine cat separated, stalking off in opposite directions. He was deeply disturbed by what he had overheard. Whether we stay here or not, he thought, it can't be good for Leafstar and Echo Song to disagree so wildly. Clan cats need certainty from their leader and their medicine cat. Not having that certainty made Hawkwing feel as if icy claws were raking through his pelt. A painful yowl broke into Hawkwing's dream of the big bird attacking his clanmates. At first he thought the noise was part of the dream, but then he realized it was coming from outside the den. Picking his way around his clanmates who were beginning to stir, Hawkwing blundered into the open. The morning was damp and misty, but the sun was already breaking through the foliage above the camp, and every drop of dew glittered with light. At first everything seemed peaceful. Then the yowling came again, and Hawkwing spotted Curlypaw standing outside the entrance to the nursery, her eyes wide with distress. "What's happening?" Hawkwing asked, bounding over to her.
"It's Plumwillow,"
Curlypaw replied.
"Her kids are coming, but something is going wrong."
For a moment Hawkwing felt as though his fur was tightening around his flanks. He could barely breathe, imagining all too clearly what Plumwillow must be suffering to go through her kidding without a mate. A pang of renewed pain passed through him as he wondered whether Pebbleshine would have any cat to help her when the time came for their kits to be born. It's not really my place to help Plumwillow, he thought, but I can't let her face it alone. Slipping into the nursery, he found Echo Song there with Fidgetpaw, both of them bending over the motionless body of Plumwillow. The tense argument with Leafstar the day before might as well never have happened. Echo Song was back to normal again, the calm, efficient medicine cat. "What's the matter?" Hawkwing asked.
"The first kid is coming out feet first,"
Echo Song replied, with a brief glance over her shoulder.
"Plumwillow can make it through if she has the energy for it, but she's weak. Plumwillow, you've got to try."
"I can't,"
Plumwillow murmured. Her eyes were glazed and her voice was blurred, as if she had withdrawn far into herself. Hawkwing's instincts told him what was wrong. "Plumwillow," he mewed, moving to stand beside the gray she-cat's head. "I know you can do this." Plumwillow looked up at him, startled and almost hostile.
"What are you doing in here?"
she asked.
"You have no—"
"I'm the perfect cat to help you through this," Hawkwing interrupted, resting his tail tip on Plumwillow's shoulder. "I know what it feels like to lose your mate, how it feels like there's no reason to go on." Slowly, Plumwillow nodded.
All this time I've been going on for the sake of the kits, but if there's something wrong with them, there is no reason."
"You're wrong." Hawkwing tried to put all the strength into his voice that he had wanted to give to Plumwillow. "You have a big reason coming. Sandy knows his lovely kits. They can still be born healthy if you stay strong, and every time you look at them, you'll see the best of both you and your mate." Hawkwing had to struggle to keep his voice steady on the last few words, remembering the kits from his dream. "I'll never see my own kits, never sit with Pebbleshine while she gives birth."
"You look so sad,"
Plumwillow whispered. "That's why you have to pull it together," Hawkwing told her. "You have to be strong, because you're lucky enough to have something I will never have." Understanding began to dawn in Plumwillow's eyes.
"Why do you care about what happens to me?"
she asked. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone, trapped in a dark cave with no light and no way out." Plumwillow gritted her teeth, and Hawkwing realized that another powerful pain was rippling through her belly. This time she didn't cry out, but flexed her muscles to push her kits into the world.
"Yes," Echo Song meowed. "That's right, it's coming."
Within heartbeats, as Hawkwing watched in wonder, a tiny gray kit slid out onto the mossy bedding of the nursery. Its pelt was wet, plastered to its body, and Echo Song nudged it toward Plumwillow, who began licking it vigorously.
"A little Tom, and very strong and healthy,"
Echo Song meowed. Plumwillow's belly spasmed again, and almost before Hawkwing realized it, a second and then a third kit were born. Another Tom, light brown with ginger legs, just like his father, Sandy Nose, and a pale tabby she-kit. Plumwillow couldn't stop purring as she nuzzled and licked them and guided them toward her belly so that they could suckle.
"They're so beautiful,"
she whispered, her eyes shining with joy. Hawkwing gazed down at the happy family, an ache in his heart so deep that he almost cried out with the pain of it. "I'm not really part of this." "You're okay now, so I'll just go," he began. Plumwillow raised her head to look at him.
"No, don't,"
she mewed.
"I could never have managed this without you. Losing Sandy Nose still feels so raw, and I could never take another mate, but I'll need help with these kits. If I'm not presuming too much, would you want to help me?"
Gazing down at the kits, Hawkwing felt the empty places in his heart begin to fill again. "They're not mine, and they never will be," he thought. "But they're so tiny, so perfect." "Of course I'll help you, Plumwillow," he promised. Hawkwing padded into the camp with a rabbit dangling from his jaws. At once, excited squealing came from the nursery, and Plumwillow's 3 kits came tumbling out, tripping over each other in their eagerness to greet him first. "Oh," Firefern mewed around her vole as she followed Hawkwing into camp, her eyes glinting with amusement. "It looks like you're wanted." The 3 kits were a moon old now, and already developing into healthy, energetic cats. Dew-Kit, the sturdy gray Tom, Fin-Kit, who looked exactly like his father, with the same brown pelt and ginger legs, and Reed-Kit, the little tabby she-kit. Hawkwing loved them all, and loved every moment that he spent with them. Firefern carried her prey to the fresh-kill pile along with Harrybrook and Birdwing, the other members of the patrol. Hawkwing glanced sharply around until his gaze fell on his apprentice, Curlypaw, who was grooming herself outside her den. "Curlypaw," he called, beckoning with his tail. His apprentice sprang up and padded over to him, stumbling over Fin-Kit, who was bouncing around Hawkwing along with his littermates.
"Yes, Hawkwing?"
she mewed. "Don't yes, Hawkwing, me," he snapped. "Where were you this morning? I wanted to take you for battle practice, and you were nowhere to be found." Curlypaw blinked innocently.
"Oh, sorry, Hawkwing," she responded. "I was awake early, so I thought I'd go hunting on my own for a while. I caught 2 mice," she finished proudly.
"That's all very well, but—" Hawkwing began, then broke off as all 3 kits jumped on him, digging their tiny claws into his pelt. "Okay, Curlypaw," he meowed, struggling to make himself heard over the joyful squealing of the kits. "Just ask first next time, and take this rabbit to the fresh kill pile.
As Curly Paw snatched up the prey and carried it off, Hawkwing flopped over on his side with the 3 kits swarming all over him. "Do, Kit, take your paw out of my ear," he protested. "And Fin, Kit, that's my tail you're biting."
"You're a rabbit, and we're hunting you,"
Reed Kit informed him.
"Oh, no!"
Hawkwing let out a pretend wail of terror.
"You're such good hunters! I can't escape!"
As the kits pummeled him with their soft paws, Hawkwing glanced across at the nursery to see Plumwillow sitting outside, watching their game with a happy expression. He rose to his paws and staggered across to her, with the kits still hanging on to him.
"You've got your paws full there,"
Plumwillow observed with a small growl of laughter. "I certainly have," Hawkwing agreed. "But they—" He broke off at the distant sound, the bark of a 2-leg monster. His contented mood faded, and he let out a huff of annoyance. 2 legs again! Through the long days of Greenleaf, the sun had shone brightly. Prey had been running well, and every cat was well fed. There's only been one problem with the warm weather. 2 legs. Every cat had thought it was odd that the 2 legs had made nests beside the lake and then left them behind. But as soon as the days got warmer, they had come back. The lake, which should have been peaceful under the brilliant blue sky, was suddenly surrounded by 2 legs, playing and shouting and sometimes even throwing themselves into the water to splash about. All of them with monsters full of 2-leg stuff, Hawkwing thought irritably, and they run around as if they own the place. "I wish they'd all just go away," he complained.
"Some of them even bring dogs,"
Plumwillow responded. With an anxious glance at the kits, she added,
"They come far too close to our camp for my liking."
"But the dogs look pretty stupid," Hawkwing tried to reassure her. "They mostly lie around on the grass and chase sticks that 2 legs throw."
"Maybe."
Plumwillow still looked uneasy.
"But you know what I saw the other day? A 2-leg got into a water monster. It tore around the lake, churning up the water and scaring the ducks. What next? That's what I want to know."
Hawkwing had no idea. He only knew that the territory seemed to get noisier every day, and it felt more dangerous. He hadn't told Plumwillow because he didn't want to upset her, but sometimes when he and Curly Paw had been out hunting, 2 legs had spotted them and tried to coax them closer. But he and his apprentice knew the tricks 2 legs liked to play. They had always managed to run off before the 2 legs could grab them. Why do 2 legs always think you want to go to them anyway? Like they're so fascinating. The roar of another monster filled the air, growing rapidly louder and then stopping abruptly. Leafstar, who was chatting with Firefern a couple of tail lengths away, glanced up and caught Hawkwing's gaze. "It sounds like we have more 2-leg company," Hawkwing remarked. Leafstar let out an exasperated noise. "We just need to keep our distance," she mewed. That's been Leafstar's solution ever since the 2 legs appeared, Hawkwing thought. But is that even possible? There are so many of them now, swarming all over. As the sun sunk lower in the sky, the cats of SkyClan gathered around the freshkill pile to eat. Hawkwing basked in the scarlet light, thinking of how much he loved Greenleaf. The long days and nights, the beautiful sunsets. But then his thoughts flew back to Pebbleshine, and the pain of loss gripped his heart again, as if powerful claws were sinking into it. The prey in his belly felt heavy as he remembered how Pebbleshine's fur shone in sunlight. She must be close to kidding by now, he thought, or maybe our kits are already born. To distract himself from these dark thoughts, he turned to Plumwillow's kits. "Look, kits," he meowed, scratching up some moss from the floor of the camp and patting it into a ball. "Which of you can throw this moss ball farthest?"
"I cannot. Watch me."
As his gaze followed the 3 kits, scrambling and falling over each other's paws, shredding the moss ball in their eagerness, Hawkwing found the ache in his heart eased. Then a different sound reached Hawkwing's ears, drowning the happy squeaking of the kits. That's a dog barking. And another. And another. Hawkwing's belly lurched in surprise as he realized how close the dogs were. They're normally so lazy they stay by the lake, well away from our camp. He had only a moment, just enough time to glance across at Leafstar, before 4 dogs burst into the camp. Their huge paws slammed against the ground, their jaws drooling as they growled. Hawkwing gagged as their scent flooded over him. These weren't like the dogs Hawkwing had seen with their 2 legs, lounging on the grass beside the 2-leg dens. One of those had been even smaller than a cat, wearing some weird kind of 2-leg pelt. All 4 of these dogs were big and fast, lean and long-legged, with sleek, brindled pelts. Their jaws gaped to show rows of huge, sharp teeth. Hawkwing almost thought they were some kind of wild creature until he noticed their 2-leg collars. As the dogs spotted the group of cats, their eyes rolled in excitement. Their barking grew even louder. Without taking the time to think, Hawkwing grabbed Dewkit by the scruff and shoved Reedkit onto his back. "Run!" he mumbled to Plumwillow through his mouthful of fur as he pushed Finkit toward her. Plumwillow grabbed Finkit, but stumbled in her haste as she picked him up. One of the dogs spotted her and raced toward her. After one terrified glance, Plumwillow whipped around and kept pace with Hawkwing as he scrambled up the steep slope at the far side of the camp and took off into the woods. Behind him, he heard more barking and the panic-stricken screeching of his clanmates, but he had no time to look back. The dogs were on their trail. Chapter 30. Hawkwing fled into the trees with Plumwillow at his side, racing along until his lungs burned. He risked a glance over his shoulder and realized that only 1 dog was following them. But it was much bigger than they were, and Hawkwing knew they would be outmatched if it came to a fight. The dog's disgusting scent was all around them, and Hawkwing could hear its panting breath. It ran with its jaws open, its tongue lolling out, and it seemed tireless. "We're not going to make it." Hawkwing remembered how Echo Song had prophesied that bad things would happen if they stayed beside the lake. Was I wrong not to speak up and support her? He asked himself. After all we've been through, is this how SkyClan will end? Then Hawkwing spotted a gorse thicket at the bottom of a rocky slope. "Down there!" he gasped. Together he and Plumwillow scrambled down the slope, the kits letting out shrill wails of terror. When they reached the thicket, they shoved the kits deep within the thorns, followed them as far as they could, then turned to face the dog.
"It might be too big to get at us in here,"
Plumwillow panted. At first the dog whined and scrabbled around at the edge of the thicket, and Hawkwing began to hope that it would get bored and go away. But then its whines changed to snarls of frustration, and it began to push its way into the gorse, ignoring the thorns that tore at its pelt. Hawkwing slid out his claws. "Back off, mange pelt," he growled. You could feel the dog's hot breath on his face. "If it comes in, go for its eyes," he whispered to Plumwillow. But before the dog could attack, distant barking sounded from the direction of the camp. The dog halted, its head raised to listen, and Hawkwing caught his breath, suddenly hopeful. The barking came again. The dog swung its head around, then with a last snarl it backed out of the gorse thicket and ran off. "Thanks, StarClan," Hawkwing thought, as he poked his head out of the bushes to watch it go. Hawkwing's heart was pounding, and he was shaking with relief as he turned to Plumwillow. "It looks like we're safe. For now," he meowed. Plumwillow was quivering with fear and tension.
"Thank you, Hawkwing,"
she whispered, pressing herself against his side.
"You saved the kits."
We both did. The kits crept to their mother's side, eyes still wide with shock. Plumwillow encircled them with her tail and held them close to her and Hawkwing. "They are not my family," Hawkwing told himself. "But oh, StarClan, I wish they were." Night had fallen by the time Hawkwing limped back into the camp with Plumwillow and the kits. He found the rest of his clan huddled beside the fresh kill pile. Their pelts were bushed up and ragged. Their voices sounded hoarse as they discussed the dog attack.
"Hawkwing!"
His sister Blossomheart sprang to her paws and ran across the camp to meet him.
"Are you okay? Are the kits okay?"
"We're all fine," Hawkwing replied wearily, setting Dewkit down and letting Reedkit slide off his back. "A bit scratched, and I've got a thorn in my pad. We had to hide in a gorse thicket."
"Thanks, StarClan," Blossomheart exclaimed. "I was so worried."
"What about the rest of you?"
"We're okay,"
Blossomheart told him.
Clovertail got bitten, and one of the dogs ripped part of Firefern's pelt off, but Echo Song has seen to them, and it's not serious. The rest of us are just a bit bruised, but we fought the vicious brutes off.
she finished with satisfaction.
That's good to hear,
Plumwillow mewed, relief in her voice.
Hawkwing, I'm going to take the kits back to the nursery. They're exhausted.
Hawkwing nodded, seeing that she was right. The normally energetic kits could hardly put one paw in front of another as their mother herded them across the camp to the nursery. They don't look scared anymore, he remarked. They don't understand how close we came to something terrible. Plumwillow sighed.
The sooner they forget, the better.
When they had gone, Hawkwing followed Blossomheart to join his clanmates.
The dogs are really a problem now.
Birdwing was meowing as he padded up.
It's not safe here.
Greenleaf is almost over,
Leafstar responded.
We just have to move the camp further away from the dogs.
Our camp was far away from the dogs, Sparrowpelt pointed out. Or so we thought. If we move, who's to say that they won't find our new camp?
And it's not only the dogs,
Firefern protested, leaping to her paws.
They wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the two legs. They're a much greater danger.
That's right,
Clovertail put in.
We settled here partly because it was peaceful, safe, and free of two legs. Now it's like we're living in the middle of a two-leg place.
Hey, don't get carried away, MacGyver mewed, sounding much calmer than the she-cats. Yes, there are two legs here now, but there's plenty of prey and unspoiled territory as well, and I've noticed that some of the two legs are packing up and leaving. Can't we put up with them for a bit longer? Maybe they'll all be gone by Leaf Bear. Parsley Seed nodded vigorously in agreement. Two legs are better than raccoons, he pointed out. At least the worst they'll do is try to pet us.
That's not true,
Echo Song spoke up, her voice deeply serious.
Parsley Seed, you haven't lived long enough to see the evil two legs can do.
You're right, Echo Song,
Leafstar meowed, tipping her head to the medicine cat.
But I think MacGyver's right too, that the two legs are beginning to leave. I believe we can avoid the ones who remain by moving our camp.
Cries of protest rose from the cats who surrounded her.
Wherever we go, there'll be two legs! There's nowhere as sheltered as where we are now.
Echo Song silenced the objections with a wave of her tail as she rose to her paws and picked her way through the crowd of cats to stand in front of Leafstar.
I don't know if moving our camp will help or not, she announced, and I don't intend to stay and find out.
An even deeper silence rippled through the clan as the cats exchanged shocked glances. Leafstar was staring wide-eyed at the medicine cat, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard.
What do you mean?
She asked. Echo Song let out a sigh. Hawkwing could see the distress in her eyes.
I've tried to see things your way, Leafstar, she began. I really have. I want the clan to settle down and become strong again, but I've just had another vision of a smoldering ember, the spark that remains. We're no closer to finding it, and now we're not even trying.
Has StarClan spoken to you again?
Leafstar asked urgently. Echo Song shook her head.
StarClan has already made it very clear that we're supposed to unite with the other clans. The dog attack was a reminder of that, maybe even a sign. I can no longer ignore my feelings that we have turned our back on StarClan and their instructions. There's only one way to dispel the darkness, and that is to find the spark that remains.
She paused, taking a deep breath.
In the morning, I will set out to search for the lake in my visions, where I believe I will find ThunderClan.
Hawkwing felt as though a lightning bolt had appeared out of a clear sky and struck his clan. He expected more protests, but every cat was silent, their gazes fixed on Leafstar. The unthinkable was happening, and no cat had any words.
Why would you do this?
Leafstar asked quietly.
After we've lived together for so many seasons. I know I have a duty to SkyClan,
Echo Song replied. Hawkwing thought she was having trouble keeping her voice steady.
But I have just as great a duty to StarClan. And I believe I haven't received any more messages from them because I'm not following their instructions.
And what about your clanmates?
Leafstar demanded, anger edging its way into her voice.
Clovertail was bitten today, and Firefern had her shoulder fur torn off.
She angled her ears toward the two she-cats.
Who will look after them?
I thought of that, of course I did, Echo Song responded. And I spoke to Fidgetpaw. He will stay and take good care of SkyClan.
What?
Leafstar's voice rose.
Are you serious? Fidget-Paw is smart and he's learning quickly, but he's still only an apprentice. What if something terrible happened and Fidget-Paw didn't know what to do? That's the risk we have to take.
Echo Song flexed her claws, digging them hard into the ground.
Believe me, Leaf Star, I've thought long and hard about this. But I know that drastic steps must be taken to save the clan, and I believe that Fidget-Paw is capable. I've trained him as well as I can.
Fidget-Paw ducked his head where he sat on the edge of the crowd of cats.
I'll do my best, Leaf Star,
he mewed in a small voice, as if he was overwhelmed by the thought of taking responsibility for all of SkyClan. He must be so nervous, Hawkwing thought sympathetically. Echo Song is asking a lot of him. For a few moments that seemed to drag out for moons, Leaf Star and Echo Song faced each other. Hawkwing could feel the tension in the air between them. At last, Echo Song bowed her head.
Leaf Star, you know that I must follow StarClan's wishes. They have saved us before.
For a long moment, Leaf Star remained in thoughtful silence. Then she gave a weary nod.
I know you believe that you have to do this. I'm not happy that you're leaving, and I have my doubts that Fidget-Paw is ready to take on this job. But if you're right, and this is truly the will of StarClan, then perhaps one day we'll be united again. I hope and pray that will happen,
Echo Song responded. Then she stood up straighter, letting her gaze travel around the clan, and continued more briskly.
I would prefer not to go alone. Leaf Star, will you allow some cats to come with me to find the lake I believe StarClan means us to find?
Leaf Star's ears twitched up, and for a moment Hawkwing thought that she would refuse. Then she dipped her head in reluctant agreement.
I know some cats might feel the same as you, Echo Song, she mewed. If any cat wants to leave with you, I will not stand in their way.
Thank you, Echo Song murmured.
I'll come,
Bella Leaf offered immediately, rising to her paws. As she spoke, Harry Brook half rose, seemed to change his mind, then got up to stand beside Bella Leaf.
I'll come too,
he meowed.
I'm sorry,
he added, his eyes distraught as he gazed at his mother, Leaf Star.
I don't want to leave you, but I think Echo Song is right, and she can't just wander off without any warriors to take care of her.
Leaf Star's voice was tight as she responded.
You must follow your heart, Harry Brook.
Hawkwing felt his paws twitching. All his instincts were telling him to volunteer to go with Echo Song, but there were too many arguments against it. I have duties here. I have Curly Paw to train, and I owe so much to Leaf Star. Aware of some cat's gaze on him, he turned his head and exchanged a long look with Plumwillow. He knew that she would never leave the rest of the clan. Besides, the kids are too young to travel. He knew, too, that the old hot-headed Hawkwing, the cat who had failed all the cats he loved, would have been the first one to volunteer to leave with Echo Song. But even though he was still certain that this lake was the wrong place for SkyClan, now he felt strongly that the responsible thing to do was stay.
Is that all?
Echo Song asked. Hawkwing felt that she was staring right at him. He looked away, but that meant that his gaze fell on Leaf Star. He could tell, however hard the clan leader tried not to show it, by the tightness of her muzzle and her bristling shoulder fur, just how angry and upset she felt that more cats were leaving.
Very well,
Echo Song meowed at last.
We will leave at sunrise.
As the sun rose, SkyClan gathered at the entrance to the camp to say goodbye to Echo Song and the others.
I understand what pushed you to go,
Leaf Star mewed to the medicine cat.
But it grieves me to the bottom of my heart to see the clan split again. It was hard enough to lose Frecklewish and the other warriors who stayed beside the gorge.
Echo Song nodded. Hawkwing thought she looked regretful, but there was no sign of wavering in her decision.
I hope this will not be forever, she responded. When we find the other clans, I'll send a messenger to find the rest of you, and the cats who stayed near the gorge, too.
Hawkwing's throat went dry at the thought of seeing his lost clanmates again. Are they okay? And what about Cherrytail and Cloudmist, back in Barley's barn? Maybe one day I'll see them again, too. And Pebbleshine. She must find her way back to us. Echo Song slipped through the group of cats, saying a personal farewell to each of them. When she came to Hawkwing, she fixed him with a clear green gaze.
You have come so far,
she murmured. As a warm pride flooded Hawkwing's pelt, she added,
but you still have far to go. Remember who you are, Hawkwing.
Then she touched her nose to his and moved on. Startled, Hawkwing considered her words as he watched her go. Remember who I am. But then tiny claws fastened into his pelt from behind, and he heard Dewkit squealing into his ear.
I'm a two-legged dog! Fight me!
I've found my family, Hawkwing thought. And even though Plumwillow wasn't his true mate, that was enough to fill his heart. For now.